Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's talk about AEW. And let's talk about AEW Fyter Fest Night 1, because what a show. I mean, we'll get into the results. We'll get into the key outcomes of Fyter Fest last night, just the first night of it. But it must be said, I mean, it really must be said, you will do better. And you will do very, very well to find a better 2-hour broadcast of pro wrestling than what we saw last night on Fyter Fest. Was it a completely perfect show? No. But I'm telling you that if you haven't watched it, go watch Fyter Fest Night 1 last night, because it was excellent. That is, gosh, we have missed pro wrestling so much over the course of the last 16 to 18 months because of the pandemic. The crowd in Texas was just fantastic. The matches were great. The pacing of that show last night was just so good. And that's something that I think is probably my biggest takeaway from last night. Wasn't that just every segment felt like a hit? Because it really did. Most segments, once they were over, you went, man, that was a good segment. Or, man, that crowd is red hot. Or, man, that guy is over. That person is over. Poor, the crowd's really into them. All of that. But the pacing of last night's show was just tremendous by AEW. It really, really was that. It was a 2-hour show and it went like that. And I don't mean to turn this into AEW versus WWE. AEW's great, WWE's bad. You're an AEW stan, you're an AEW mark or anything like that, because I'm really not. I've been critical of certain aspects of AEW since the promotion debuted, and I still will be to this day. I don't think it's a perfect company at all. There are still lots of things that I would say that needs to be improved, that should be changed, that should be tweaked. But last night, objectively, that was good television. For Fyter Fest Night 1. It truly was a fantastic show. I mean, the pacing was just great. Everything was just bang, bang, bang. It flowed so well. And that crowd, just what a difference. What a difference that... We know what a difference a crowd can make, but a red-hot crowd. I mean, that crowd last night in Texas, they were into that show. They were so into that show. Everything was just a hit last night. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, you will do very well to find a better 2-hour pro wrestling broadcast than what we saw last night on TNT. It was excellent. It was just absolutely excellent. And I'm already excited for next week. I'm already excited for what they've got planned going forward with Night 2 of Fyter Fest, with Fight for the Fallen, with All Out in September. Everything just last night, it really was fantastic. A truly great show by AEW and a very exciting time for All Elite Wrestling. The roster's great. The crowds are red hot. The angles they've got going on right now are just, they're hitting on every cylinder. It was excellent. It really was. Now, the main event last night of Fyter Fest Night 1 was Darby Allin, who defeated All Ego Ethan Page in AEW's first ever Coffin Match. Now, for weeks, of course, Ethan Page had been saying he was going to put the final nail in Darby Allin's coffin, but decided to actually up the ante by having an actual coffin match against his rival. Now, during the end of last night's match, Darby Allin used his skateboard as he double stomped down on Ethan Page's back, sending his opponent into the coffin. Allin then slammed the lid shut, picked up the victory, but it wasn't over there, because post-match, Darby Allin decided to climb up to the top rope and hit his finisher, a coffin drop on the closed coffin, finally putting the final nail in the coffin with Ethan Page inside. Darby Allin matches they're just so much fun. They are just so much fun. I know the comparison is always made between him and Jeff Hardy, but I think that's the real comparison I think you can make about Darby Allin. I really do. I think, sometimes, if anything, maybe it's not fair to compare him to anyone, because he's so his own person. I mean, there aren't many people just around in general that are like Darby Allin. He's got his unique charisma. He's got his unique identity. He's very much his own man, and there aren't a lot of people that are like him in the world, let alone in pro wrestling. Certainly not in pro wrestling. So he's so unique and he's so different, but he does remind you of a Jeff Hardy from the late 90s, when Jeff Hardy was in his prime. But again, it's kind of superficial, those comparisons, because I think the biggest comparison maybe is the face paint and the fact that, some of the death-defying things that they do in their matches. But Darby Allin's so different from Hardy in the sense that Darby Allin's matches, they're just chaos. They're just absolute chaos. My only criticism, to be honest, of Darby Allin watching his matches would be how long can you keep that up? Because there's no way he's not going to be hurting after a while. I mean, Jeff Hardy, I guess, is still wrestling to this day, but he's in a reduced style considering what he used to be like. And you do kind of say the same about Darby Allin. Like, watching the match last night, I know not every Darby Allin match is like the Coffin match we saw last night, but you do sometimes watch him and just go, yeah, that's going to catch up, surely. I mean, Darby Allin did a balcony dive during picture-in-picture last night. it was nuts. And, you know, when he does his suicide dive, I mean, he's got one of the best topes in the business for me because, you know, sometimes when you see the topes and it's kind of a catch, it's a bit powder puff. Darby Allin picks up so much pace, so much speed, and he legitimately just launches himself at his opponent. No care for his own well-being. It's tremendous. And I saw some people criticizing the spot after the match of Darby Allin. Why would he do the coffin drop on the closed coffin? Why would he do that? Because it's a great spot. You know, people go, it doesn't make any logic. Not a lot of the stuff Darby Allin does has a lot of logic. I spoke about Jeff Hardy. You would say that about Jeff Hardy and some of the crazy stunts he's done throughout his career. Why would you jump off a steel cage? Why would you dive on a ladder? Why would you just put him through a table anyway? Sometimes if you ask these questions too much, you'll get an answer that it's not logical. Because it's pro wrestling. Pro wrestling, if you dive too much into it, isn't sometimes that logical. That's sometimes the issue of pro wrestling. I thought it was a real great main event. The crowd loved it. And I'm going to say this a lot during this video today because I said it a lot watching the show last night. But Darby Allin's a star. He is so totally a star for AEW. Everything about him hits. The crowd absolutely love this guy. He just, from the start, his entrance music's got the guitar riff. As soon as that guitar riff goes, he gets a big pop from the crowd, and the crowd are so into him. They are so into him. He is so unique, and you watch his matches. He's already been a TNT champion. Personally, I watch his matches, and I say, this guy could be a world champion in the next 18 months for AEW. He's just that popular, and he's still incredibly young. I think he's still in his 20s. And that's the case for a lot of AEW stars. A lot of people on social media like to rag on AEW. Look, they're just filled with these ex-WWE stars. They're the same with WCW. They're the same with Impact Wrestling, TNA in the mid-2000s. They're just bringing in these ex-WWE stars. And there are a couple on the roster. But there is this real young base in AEW of these talents that are in, again, their 20s, that are already incredibly popular and incredibly over and incredibly well-polished, that are going to carry AEW for the next 10 to 15 years. And they're already really, really good, whether it's Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, MJF. I mean, the list can go on and on of these names. Sammy Guevara. The list can go on of these talents that, again, are in their 20s and are already so popular and so well established and so over with the audience and haven't really been touched by WWE in that mainstream setting. They're AEW guys. And I watched that main event last night. I thought it was absolutely tremendous. Credit to Ethan Page as well. You know, I was not critical of him going to AEW. I was just a big fan of the North, and I felt there was more for him to do in Impact. But look, he's main eventing Dynamite, so I didn't really see that happening for him this early into his AEW career. He's a tremendous promo. I think he works incredibly well with Darby. They've done a lot of work on the independent scene. They had a big rivalry in Evolve a couple of years ago as well, so they know each other very well. And whilst this might be the final match that they have for a while, I think they'll pick it up again in the future in AEW. I mean, again, you know, Ethan Page is an older guy than Darby, but who knows? In a couple of years' time, there could absolutely be a main event world title feud between the two, especially with Darby as the world champion. His potential is just unlimited right now in this promotion. I mean, the crowd is just, he's so unique, he's so over. The pairing with Sting works, gives him even more credibility. And Darby, he's just a superstar. He's an absolute superstar, and it really did cap off what was a really tremendous show by AEW last night. I really did enjoy it. Now, that was the main event. The opening match of the show was for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship, and it was Jon Moxley returning after his hiatus. He defended the championship against Karl Anderson. Of course, Karl Anderson, how much New Japan history does he have? There was a rumor that this was a plan for Wrestle Kingdom earlier this year, wasn't it? That was going to be the plan for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship, was going to be Moxley versus Karl Anderson. Obviously, they couldn't do it because of the pandemic, but this was Moxley's first appearance since Double or Nothing. Didn't show any ring rust. Moxley wasn't completely bold. There was a little bit of worry there was going to be some outside shenanigans. Thankfully, that was pretty much removed from the start as Doc Gallows was taken out by Eddie Kingston, so it was just a one-on-one encounter. Moxley gets the victory at the end after hitting the paradigm shift, and I thought it was not really, not an amazing match. It was what it was. The biggest takeaway from it, and again, talking about how great that crowd was last night in Texas. I mean, that crowd was just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. That it was a fine match, a fine opener, but it didn't matter because the crowd were just so into it. The crowd was so into Moxley. They were so into the action. They were so into the broadcast that an average match that we would have seen on Daily's Place that you would have gone, oh, okay, that was fine, taken up a notch, taken up just another level. It was just absolutely fantastic. After the match as well, it was revealed that by the AEW commentary team that Moxley now has the most number of successful IWGP US Heavyweight Championship defenses at 5. So that's very interesting. But we're going to get another match for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship next week. And it's not just going to be any match. It's going to be a Texas death match. Because as I mentioned, Moxley retained his IWGP United States Championship against Karl on Fyter Fest Night 1, but it didn't take long for a new challenger to come along as Lance Archer offered up a challenge for next Wednesday's show. Now, Lance Archer and Jon Moxley, of course, have history over that very IWGP US Championship. He referenced in a promo after the match when Moxley defeated him a year ago in a Texas death match in Japan, and then offered to have the exact same match next week in Garland, Texas on AEW Fyter Fest Night 2. Later in the show, Moxley accepted the challenge. So next week we have a Texas death match for that IWGP United States Championship. Very excited for this one. I think this is a great role for Moxley right now. The problem is sometimes Moxley is such a big deal in the world of AEW, and he's such a big star for them, second ever world champion. After he lost that world championship, there was a bit of a feeling of, what's he going to do? He's a big star. He can't just be twirling around in the mid-card doing nothing. Really enjoy the Eddie Kingston tag team. I think they're great. I still want to see a tag team title reign in the future. I think that could happen in the future, but I think this is a great spot for him because this allows him to continue working for New Japan. It keeps him involved in AEW, and it keeps him on the cutting edge of something that feels important. Miro's doing his own thing with their mid-card championship, even though Cody doesn't like to call it that, but it is. Moxie's just off in his own universe. He's doing his own thing right now. He's having badass matches, having hybrid matches in the sense of he's competing against New Japan talent, against AEW talents. He's carrying around the US Championship, so he's carrying around a title, makes him feel important. And I love the idea of a Texas death match next week. I think Moxley retains again. I don't see him dropping the championship anytime soon unless that's what New Japan wants. I think if he dropped the championship, though, he'd probably drop it to a New Japan talent at this point. I don't think he would drop it to Archer. No disrespect to Archer, but I just don't think he'll do that. I think it's giving Moxley something to do. I think we're still going eventually, and this kind of takes away from the IWGP United States Championship reign, but I think eventually we're going to get Moxley Onita in AEW. They've teased it a couple of times now on social media. Onita said it in an interview. Tony Khan himself has said that he wants to do another barbed wire exploding death match. He still is very upset about how that ended. AEW Revolution said he didn't even have to pay for it. He got a refund. It was that bad from the pyrotechnics people. And he said, look, when we do it again, and we are going to be doing it again, it's going to work. And that, to me, says that Moxley Onita exploding barbed wire death match is going to happen. I don't think that's why they're doing the Texas death match next week. I think they're just doing it because it makes sense. They're in Texas next week. They had the match in Japan originally where Moxley won that United States Championship in a Texas death match. Why wouldn't they do it again? And Tony Khan loves that style of wrestling. He loves Jon Moxley and he loves the relationship with New Japan. So I'm excited for that next week, and I think this is a great return for Moxley, and I think this is a great spot for him right now. So I'm very excited for next week. And look, if next week's show is even half as good as last night's show, then it's must-see television. It really is. Last night on Fyter Fest, we have a new champion, a new FTW champion, as Team Taz has seemingly turned their back on the Machine Brian Cage because Ricky Starks won the FTW championship against Brian Cage last night on Fyter Fest Night 1. Now, Taz, of course, reintroduced the championship at last year's Fyter Fest event, and Brian Cage held it for 377 days. Now, with the help of Powerhouse, Hobbs, and Hook, yes, Hook was there, guys, Hook was there at ringside. Hobbs clocked Brian Cage with the FTW Championship at the end of the match. Starks nailed him with a spear, got the cover, and won the FTW Championship. Of course, it's an unsanctioned title, but it's a way of kicking Brian Cage to the curb, as it were. Brian Cage is now a babyface. Ricky Starks is still a heel. Team Taz is back together, and of course, Team Taz will never split up, but this was Ricky Starks' return to action after his fractured neck. Now, Taz, of course, was on commentary during the match and sounded beyond thrilled that Ricky Starks was the new FTW champion and Brian Cage was no longer holding the title. Again, I mean, I'm going to say a similar thing like I said with the Darby Allin stuff. But Ricky Starks is so over. He is so popular. And I know it was a partisan crowd last night. I know it was a hometown crowd, even though Ricky Starks is billed from Louisiana. I think he actually resides in Texas. I think he might even be from Texas. I don't know. But it was a hometown crowd for Ricky Starks. And irrespective of that, irrespective of it being a hometown partisan crowd for Ricky Starks, he is so over. He is so popular. This is the guy the crowd really likes, even though he's a heel. I think you can only keep him as a heel for so long, to be honest, because he's that popular. I know there have been comparisons made between him and The Rock because of the way that he dresses and the way that he talks. I think that's a reach, to be honest. I think the whole comparison to The Rock is a reach. Ricky Starks is just Ricky Starks. He's a very good promo. He's very good in the ring, technically sound, but he's got charisma for absolute days. And I said this a while ago when we were talking about Brian Cage and Team Taz, that I thought eventually Brian Cage would be excommunicated from Team Taz. It made sense for me that Ricky Starks would win the FTW Championship. And Ricky Starks, again, it's another young talent they have that you've got to mention. Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, MJF, Ricky Starks. I mean, the list goes on and on of these guys that are super, super young, and they're already incredibly popular with this audience. And again, Ricky Starks, I say this about so many talents on the roster, but he just came across last night as just a total superstar, a total superstar. And sometimes, again, I don't want to turn this into AEW versus WWE, but sometimes you watch Monday Night Raw or you watch SmackDown, and you look at the roster that has a lot of talent on it, great talent on there, but you look at it and you say, where is the next world champion? Who realistically could you put the title on tomorrow and it not be an issue? And sometimes for WWE programming, you can't see it. You can't see it. I have no idea. And for so many people in AEW, whether it is Ricky Starks, whether it is Darby Allin, whether it's MJF, whether it's Jungle Boy, whether it's whoever, there are so many talents that you watch and you go, if they put the World Championship on them tomorrow, it would elevate them, but it wouldn't be a reach. It would not be a reach because they're already really popular and really over and incredibly talented. And again, I watched this match last night, and just Ricky Stark, he was a total star. He is a total superstar. Thankfully, he's back after his neck injury. The hope is that if this guy stays healthy, I mean, the sky's the limit for him. And again, there are just so many talented people, young, talented people on that roster right now in AEW. It's frightening to see. We talk about how bloated the roster is, but man, what a talented roster they have, and what a great show it really was last night. It was fantastic. Now, another big bit of news coming out of Fyter Fest Night 1 was the TNT Championship's got a new look. So we've had the red strap of the... Well, we actually had like 4 versions of the TNT Championship at this point. We had the initial unfinished version of the TNT Championship that Cody Rhodes held when he was the inaugural champion. Then we had the finished version, which was the red strap with the gold plating, which was retired after the unfortunate passing of Brody Lee. That's the one that -1 has. Then we had the updated new version, which had the black strap on it, replacing the red strap. Now we have a new version. We have the white strap version of the TNT Championship, because during last night's Fyter Fest, AEW TNT champion Miro cut a promo about a hero who was once lost because he wasn't being himself. Miro was actually referring to himself as he looked back on his journey in AEW so far, noting that he was eventually rewarded with the TNT Championship. He referred to himself as the Redeemer and showed off the new championship featuring a white strap with a green ribbon in the middle of the main plate, as you can see in the photo there. I think it looks great. I think it looks absolutely great. I know some people have, again, because people just love to criticize, I know people are saying, what, it's only been around for just over a year and you've got 4 different versions of it already? Well, again, let's look at this in context. Like I said, the first version, that wasn't even a finished version. That was delayed because of the pandemic, but they wanted to go through with the TNT Championship anyway, have a tournament on telly, and also have that spot for Cody. So they gave Cody the unfinished version of the title. Then the finished version I thought looked good, and obviously, I mentioned with the passing of Brody Lee, they retired that, the black strap, and now we've got the white strap. They decided to change it. I look at it as when in the late 80s, early 90s, when you had the Ultimate Warrior, or you had Sergeant Slaughter, or you had Hulk Hogan, you had whoever. They did it with the Intercontinental Championship. They did a lot of Ultimate Warrior, where they would just change the color of the strap. It would be a yellow strap, or the World Championship would have a blue strap, or they would do this, do that. I think it's cool. I'm not opposed to it at all. Now, if you want to be really cynical about it, think of the merch. That's where you really start looking into it. Think of the merch. Because AEW have just started selling replica championships for their AEW World Championship. You think about it at this point, they've got 4 different versions of the TNT Championship they could sell if they wanted to when it comes to replica title belts. That's money. Think of the action figures. Miro. You get a Miro figure, but you also get a Miro figure with the white TNT Championship. You get a Darby Allin with the black TNT Championship. I'm not saying every champion is going to get their own TNT Championship. I think that's probably a bit silly. You're going to run out of colors eventually, but I don't have a problem with it. I think it looks great. I think it looks absolutely great. And I'm all fan of a white strap. I like the Intercontinental Championship with a white strap. Again, there are so many colors you could do. Why not? Why not? Again, think of the merch. Think of the action figures, and just in general, I love me a good-looking championship bout, and I think it looks great, the Miro Championship, so I don't have a problem with it at all. I really don't, and just, Miro's just, he's going from strength to strength. It's about time, because the first 6 months of his, about a year, to be honest, of his AEW run left a lot to be desired. Well, maybe not a year, that's probably too much, but 6 months certainly left a lot to be desired. The Kip Sabian stuff, the arcade stuff, wasn't for me. But now this version of Miro is the version of Miro we wanted when he debuted in AEW. Finally, they've got around to doing something substantial with him, and even his promo last night and that bout, everything, it clicks. It clicks, it works. So I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. Now, we have an announcement for next week's Fyter Fest, and it's going to be Chapter 1 of the 5 Labors of Jericho, they're calling it, because at Road Rager, MJF and Chris Jericho, they had a face-to-face, and MJF informed him what it was going to take for Jericho to finally get his hands on MJF in a match we're assuming at All Out in September. Now, to get to MJF, Chris Jericho's got to go through what they're calling the 5 Labors of Jericho. Now, last night it was revealed what Chapter 1 would be, and that is Jericho taking on the chairman, Shawn Spears, at Fyter Fest Night 2. Now, the stipulation put in place by MJF is that the Pinnacle member, Shawn Spears, can use chairs while Jericho cannot. Obviously, Jericho's going to win this one. I must say, I've been very critical of Shawn Spears, and I will be totally honest, I still really can't bring myself to care that much about what he does in AEW. It doesn't do it for me. It just doesn't. What I will say, though, is that, I thought the segment was good last night. They're doing their very best to stretch this MJF-Chris Jericho feud out. And look, I've said this before when it comes to WWE, so it doesn't change for AEW. With long-term storytelling and long-term storylines, if it's evolving and if stuff is different, I don't mind. I will be lying to you if I'm saying that I'm really desperate to see a Chris Jericho versus MJF match at All Out. That's probably not the case. We have seen it. We saw it last year at Full Gear. Frankly, it's crazy that nearly a year later they'll be having another match in the same storyline. I know they've done a lot since then, but I think it's Jericho wanting to elevate MJF. And again, I think MJF wins. I'm not really sure what Jericho gains by winning. He's Chris Jericho. He's established anyway. So I think Jericho might jump through all these hoops, and I think he might lose, which is certainly going to be interesting anyway. But Jericho will win next week. There's no doubt about that. Now, last night also, we saw an updated trailer for Rampage. Of course, the debut of Rampage is about a month away now. TNT has revealed the first trailer for the new AEW Rampage show. Of course, Rampage will premiere on Friday, August 13 at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on TNT. TNT touted the new one-hour show that will feature, quote, the hottest stars of today and tomorrow showcasing their athleticism, charisma, and creativity on the fastest rising stage in all of professional wrestling. The gripping one-hour show brings new content, matchups, and personalities to fans every Friday night. Of course, the premiere for Rampage will air live from the Peterson Event Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on August 13. Dynamite will air from the same venue a few days earlier on Wednesday night, marking a homecoming for the AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker. So again, we saw a better look at it. There's still details we're still waiting to find out about Rampage. I've said this a couple of times about it when we've spoken about it here on the channel. I think the preempted month that AEW had on June, I think really put realistic expectations in place for all of this, because I think people thinking that Rampage was going to go on Fridays on TNT and get the same ratings that Dynamite does on Wednesdays, we've realized that's not going to happen. We're probably looking at 500,000, 600,000, 700 at a very good show. I know it's 1 hour, but it's still 10 p.m. on a Friday. It's not a good slot. And the debut will probably do well. Maybe the second show will do well, but after that, they're going to struggle. It's going to be a difficult sell. They're going to have to produce a really good show for people to want to watch it every single week, and it's going to be tough. It's not going to be what Dynamite is on Wednesdays, and I think people need to wrap their head around that. I think, if anything, the preempted era of Dynamite in June probably, again, made expectations a bit more realistic about that, so that's a good thing. Finally, I want to talk about this, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because people just, they love it. They love the rivalry. They love the war, and they just love going at each other. But this is going to be a very interesting story. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops. It's being reported that AEW is outselling WWE in Madison Square Garden in New York. Now, of course, this is because AEW and WWE are running shows in New York at a similar time. Last month, AEW announced a special episode of Dynamite on September 22nd from the Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York, the home of the US Open. It's the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. A few days later, WWE also revealed their return to the city for an upcoming episode of SmackDown from Madison Square Garden on September 10th. Now, many fans, myself included, will probably think, well, WWE, MSG, it's their home. New York, it's their home for 50, 60 years at this point. They were called going to New York. It's their base. Many fans expected WWE to easily outshine AEW in terms of selling tickets and selling out very quickly and all that kind of stuff. Well, AEW Grand Slam Dynamite tickets went up for pre-sale yesterday, and they're selling very, very, very well. Now, tickets for the general public will go on sale I think they're already on sale now. While it remains to be seen if AEW can continue to sustain this momentum in ticket sales in the coming day, they've got off to a flying start. In comparison, SmackDown is doing well in terms of ticket sales, but it's not on the same level as AEW. So there are plenty of seats still available in MSG, and that's according to StubHub and Ticketmaster, etc. So people are looking at this going, see, AEW, they're outselling WWE in New York for a Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. Now, there are more tickets available, I think that's fair to say, but it's a big story. That is a big story. Why? I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer as to why that is. I don't know if it's pricing. I don't know if it's because there's more tickets, or the obvious one is people are more excited to go watch a Grand Slam edition of Dynamite in Arthur Ashe Stadium. It's different. Even then, going to watch a WWE show in MSG, fans would rather go watch the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. I think that's fascinating. I'm sure there are a lot of fans, by the way, that are going to both shows, considering they are on different dates. But it's a very interesting story. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think they'll both sell out. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So whilst it doesn't really matter, because in the end they probably both will sell out, the big story is that AEW have sold out quicker. Now, again, you can talk about scalpers. We spoke about this yesterday. Scalpers, StubHub, etc. Maybe people on StubHub realize there's a bigger demand. We'll sell it all out quickly because we can sell it on for more money. I don't know. It's a big story, though. And I'll be interested to see what happens going forward with it. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.